What's up, everybody? So we're out in the shop with another Shop Talk Tuesday, and in this episode we're going to continue the progress on the chopper build. So this guy right here that we forged out of a piece of 5160 leaf spring material. Now if you remember in the last episode we went ahead and got our finish put on there with our Scotch-Brite belt that was, you know, packed with compound and all that stuff. I wonder how many of y'all have actually tried that since that video has happened. Now remember, it's just a fine Scotch-Brite belt with gray compound packed into it, and then all I did was took a microfiber cloth, one of these guys, and just buffed everything off of there, and we were able to achieve that with it. Now in this episode we need to go ahead and start focusing on the handle scale section of this. Now there's a few things that we need to do here. For one, we're going to need to pick which one of these handle materials that we're going to be using, and we need to get the tang area just fine-tuned. Right now we've got a tapered tang on there. Now when it comes to doing a tapered tang, even though we forged it flat, we know that everything's where it needs to be, we still need to do some fine-tuning because there's a little bit of a swell in this area right here that I need to flatten out. So we're going to need to utilize the 2x72 to get this to where it's nice and smooth all the way to where the front of the scales are going to be. We got to make sure all that looks good so that where our tang meets our scales, everything has a real smooth, clean transition and we don't have any weird gaps or anything like that. We want to make sure everything meets up almost as if it was a machine finish, like it just is perfectly parallel, perfectly even. So that's what we're going to work on in this episode. We're going to be doing some work on the 2x72, getting everything fine-tuned, and then we're going to pick out the handle skills that are going to go on here. So that's what we have going down in this episode. Y'all don't get to see me focus on this particular part of my handle whenever I'm doing this. Most of the time I just do it, and then we talk more about the handle scales and then putting them on there and all that. We don't focus as much on y'all seeing me do the fine tuning that I do to make sure that everything meets up how it's supposed to. So we're going to focus on that now. So let's go ahead, let's jump into it. So the goal here is to be able to, like I said, make everything flat where the scales are going to be. I went ahead and marked a line right here for where the front of the scales are roughly going to end up. Now if we take our little straight edge right here and put it on here, we know that we have a high point in the center because we're able to rock it like this. We want to eliminate that high point here. We're going to be grinding on it and getting rid of that. And the reason why we're going this way with it is because I'm going to be grinding from the back to the front, focusing on getting rid of this, but I don't want to risk running this belt over the ricasso area because we want to keep this texture. So we need to remove material all the way up to here, and we're going to be using this area where my platen is actually a little bit proud of the wheel. It comes up and then it kicks back just a hair right here and then goes over the wheel. So whenever we're holding this down onto here, there's actually a gap in this area so that that belt can't end up hurting that section right there. And we're just going to remove material until we get it to where we have no more rocking and everything's nice and smooth. Then we're going to go over to the other side and do the same thing. It luckily has a high point in pretty much the same exact spot, so it shouldn't be that complicated. We're going to go ahead, start grinding on this, getting everything flat, and going from there. So now that we've taken our tang, smoothed it out, made it ready for scales, we need to go ahead and pick out what handle material we're going to use for this. Now, when it comes to the wood that I'm using, or the ones that I'm trying to choose between, these are all blocks that are made by Oleg. I'm going to leave his name right here. So Oleg. Now, I'm going to have a link for his website in the description below if you want to go check out different blocks that he makes. He makes absolutely awesome solid blocks. But he ended up sending me these a little while back. This is the first time that I really get to use these in a knife. I've used little bits and pieces and stuff like that, so I've been able to cut through them, and they are absolutely solid. Now, I've used different blocks in the past, and whenever I cut into them, we end up with all these different voids and stuff like that. These, not going to have that issue. These are absolutely solid blocks of wood. And one of the benefits to these is he actually sands them and buffs them so you know what the grain's going to look like whenever you turn it into a handle and there's no surprise. This is just beautiful, top-notch quality craftsmanship whenever it comes to these things, and I cannot wait to work with these. Now, like I said, check him out, description below, website for all of his stuff. Now, I went on my TRE Workshop Facebook page and I asked, which one of these blocks do you think I should use for this particular knife? Now, they gave me a bunch of different reasons on why I should use, each individual block and all that, and I agreed with a lot of them. Now, y'all probably already have an idea of which one I'm going to go with, but we'll see if it is. Am I going to go with this one? This one? This one? This one? This one? This one? Which one's it going to be? It's going to be this one. Now, I've already marked it so you can actually see where the handle's going to be. I really love this, this transition between all the colors here. We got our gray, red, orange, yellow, everything in there. And I think that is going to be absolutely beautiful as handle scales. I just really love the overall grain and the color of these. I think it's going to be beautiful. And because this handle is so big, you're going to get to see a lot of this. Now, when it comes to the blocks and turning them into scales or something like this, because this is one of the thinner ones, all I got to do is just cut down the center and boom, flatten them out. You got scales. So that's what I'm going to end up doing. But you might be thinking to yourself, Eric, are you going to use liners and different things like that? Nope. I want this all to speak for itself. Not every knife needs liners on it. If I was to do black liners, red liners, orange liners, or something like that, I think that it would detract and distract from this beautiful piece of wood. Not everything has to have that. And I'm not going to be doing black pins. I'm going to be doing stainless pin to go with the theme of the knife, and a stainless lanyard tube. So that's what we're going to be working with on this. I think it's going to look really cool. I think it's just going to be nice and beautiful on this. But what we need to do now is go ahead and cut these down and let me show you how I actually turn them into scales. So let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, now that we got our center line marked, we can go ahead and start cutting it down. Now, of course, this is not a wood cutting bandsaw or something like that. This is just my porta bandsaw that I use to cut metal and everything like that. We're going to go ahead and cut through this. It's not going to cut super straight, but because these are thicker, I'll be able to get onto the 2x72 and make sure everything's square after the fact. So I'm not super worried about it wandering a little bit, but we do need to go slow, because if we start forcing into this, what's going to happen is this band is going to start contorting and bending and stuff like that. And what could happen is, instead of it cutting straight down the center, it could wander from on the bottom here and end up cutting at an angle. Pretty crazy. So we just need to be careful, go slow, and not rush ourselves. So you can see how it's wandered a little bit. We're a little bit of a difference in size there. It's almost perfect that way. Going downhill there on both sides. But you can see we still have plenty of meat when it comes to the two small sections. So all we're going to do is get onto the 2x72 and we're going to square up the two sides that we cut because we got to flatten these anyways. We're going to go ahead, square those up so that everything is the right size. But in order to do so, we're just going to take and mark. We're going to find the lowest point, which is probably this one right here, and we're going to mark that with our Sharpie all the way around the whole entire side so we know what to flatten down to. So we're just going to take it and mark, you know, an even line all the way around. Before I do that, I need to find something that is the perfect height for the area that is the lowest point. And then we'll get it marked up and we'll start grinding it down on the 2x72. Alright, so what I did was just use the index cards to help me figure out where the lowest point on both scales were so that I could then mark a line all the way around it and go to that point, and then both scales will end up being the same thickness. So now that we have that figured out, I can go ahead and mark this. Now we got that all the way around on both, and they're going to end up matching both scales now. So now we need to grind this down, get rid of that material, and have two even matched scales. Alright guys, let's go ahead and wrap this Shop Talk Tuesday up here. We've got our Tang nice and flattened. And to some people, they may think, well, the whole thing needs to be shiny in order for it to be flattened. No, it's fully flattened. This right here, I didn't feel the need to grind anymore in this area or to thin it out anymore. Same thing for this side right here. It is even all the way around where the scales are going to actually attach and all that. So we left a little bit of meat on the bone. Same thing with this area up here. There was no need to bring the belt all the way up here. It's perfectly flat from here all the way back to the back on both sides. So we're going to have a nice, meet up where the scales are going to meet up to the Tang. Now we got that part done on this. Then we went ahead, we got our scales or our block turned into scales right there. So now we have a matching, even, smooth, perfectly flat set of scales. And I could have went ahead and done the whole attaching the scales to this and do all that stuff in this episode, but I would have had to have not focused on very much. And in the next episode, I want to focus on the actual attaching of the handle scales and all that, because In this episode, we of course made sure Tang was fully set up, everything was good to go on it, and then we made sure that scales or block was turned into scales, flattened, and everything was good to go on it. Got it taped together, all that, so that in the next episode we can use that whole episode just for the attaching process. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, why would you dedicate a whole entire episode to just attaching the scales? There's a lot that goes into it. It's not just, okay, you know, epoxy, slap them on there, you're done. We have to actually take and cut the actual handle profile out of these scales. We've got to drill holes for where all the pins are going to be. Then we've got to actually profile and sand and buff the part of the scales that are going to meet the ricasso area right here, because once you attach the scales, you can't mess with that area. And then we've got to do the whole glue up and all that stuff. So there's a lot that goes into that section, and typically people only dedicate about 30 to 40 seconds of a video to the actual attaching of the handle scales, and there's a lot that goes into that particular process to make sure that your fit and finish is top notch. If you just don't really think about it and you take a block of scales, you stick them on here, and then you grind out the profile, and you end up with unfinished fronts where this area meets the ricasso. You end up with real straight angular lines because you didn't take the time to profile correctly, to actually do real nice curved lines and finishing those fronts of the scales and doing all that stuff. You're going to have a knife that looks cool in a picture, but as soon as someone takes that knife and looks at it and actually does this, they're going to go, wow, they didn't finish that section. There's gapping right here. There's weird stuff. They didn't actually finish the spine and the belly of the Tang. You got grind lines everywhere. No. We want to make sure that if we're going to do this, that we're going to do it correctly, that we're going to take the time to, you know, sand those things, buff those things, get everything right. So we're going to focus on that in the next episode of Shop Talk Tuesday, so next Tuesday. Hopefully y'all are excited about that. You know, we've got our wonderful buoy challenge that's going to be happening here very soon. Those videos are going to get released here soon, and y'all are going to love that. So much content for y'all to watch. And then y'all are going to get the vote for who y'all think is the best. Well, whose buoy y'all think is the best. Everybody's awesome knife makers, but you'll get the vote for which buoy y'all think is the bestest. Now, after that, I'm going to be on a podcast like I was talking about in the last episode, so y'all will have that to look forward to and get a little bit of info about me and whatever else we end up talking about. Guys, that is pretty much the end of this one now. One last little thing. 25,000 subscribers is coming up real quick. I'm going to be doing a giveaway knife. This knife right here. I'm going to be giving that one away at 25,000 subscribers. I'll talk more about that when we hit that mark and tell you how to actually get entered in to win that thing. It's very simple, very easy. So y'all will have that coming up as well. Thank y'all for coming by. If y'all would, give this video a thumbs up, share this video, subscribe to the channel. Y'all have an amazing day. Y'all stay safe out there. I'll catch y'all next time.